Welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving into a topic that's been on many people's minds lately: the possibility of a second American Civil War. Now, to unpack this, we need to delve into the roots of the discontent that has spread across the nation. Firstly, let's consider the ever-widening economic divide, a chasm that has been growing between the rich and the poor. Over the past few decades, the income of the wealthy has soared, while the middle class has dwindled, and the working class has had to struggle to make ends meet. This disparity has bred resentment and anger, particularly among those who feel they've been left in the dust of progress. Then, there's the rise of partisanship. The two major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, have been steadily drifting apart, creating a polarized landscape. This polarization has seeped into the very fabric of the nation, leading to a society where individuals strongly identify with one party or the other, and compromise seems like a distant dream. The result is a stalemate in Washington, D.C., and an atmosphere of hostility and distrust that permeates the country. This political and economic divide is not just a chasm between ideologies and income brackets. It's a rift that has torn families apart, turned neighbors against each other, and made national unity seem like an elusive ideal. It's a divide that has been fueled by resentment and dissatisfaction, by the feeling of being left behind, of being unheard. What we're seeing is not just a political divide, but a social one. A divide that has seeped into every corner of American life, from the workplace to the dinner table. It's a divide that has made compromise seem like a betrayal, and dialogue seem like a surrender. This has made it very difficult to get anything done in Washington, D.C., and it has also led to a lot of hostility and distrust between the two sides. There have been a number of warning signs in recent years that suggest that America could be headed for civil war. Let's unpack some of these events. Back in 2017, the election of Donald Trump incited a wave of protests and riots across the country. His presidency sparked a level of political division that the nation hadn't seen in years, and these protests were a clear indication of the deep-seated discontent among a significant portion of the population. Fast forward to 2020. The world watched in shock as an armed insurrection took place at the U.S. Capitol building. This was an unprecedented event in American history, and it sent a chilling message about the extent of the divisions within the country. Then, in 2021, the nation was rocked by a series of high-profile shootings. A grocery store in Buffalo, New York, became the scene of a tragic act of violence. Shortly after, an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, was targeted. These incidents served as stark reminders of the potential for violence that lurks beneath the surface of these societal tensions. Each of these events has further heightened tensions, stirring up fear and uncertainty. It's not just the violence itself that's disturbing, but the divisive rhetoric and the lack of willingness to find common ground. The narrative seems to be one of us versus them, a mindset that can set the stage for internal conflict. In fact, a recent poll conducted showed that 1/3 of Americans believe civil war is likely within the next 5 years. That's a significant number of people who see the current state of division as not just a passing phase, but a potentially dangerous and long-lasting problem. These events have all served to heighten tensions in the country, and they have made many people feel like civil war is a real possibility. It's a grim thought, but it's important to recognize these warning signs and understand what they could mean for the future of the United States. So, what would a second American Civil War look like? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Picture this: a nation split into factions, each with its own ideologies, resources, and power. These factions wouldn't necessarily be geographical as they were in the first Civil War. They could very well be ideological, making the conflict even more complex and widespread. The battles wouldn't be fought solely on traditional battlegrounds. With the advent of technology, warfare has evolved. Cyber warfare could lead to severe disruptions in communication, transportation, and essential services. This could potentially escalate the crisis exponentially, affecting every individual, regardless of their involvement in the conflict. Now let's talk about the human cost. Millions could be displaced as the conflict escalates. Picture families torn apart, homes destroyed, and communities devastated. Not just that, but the economic impact would be staggering. A severe economic downturn is almost a given in such a scenario. Businesses would collapse, unemployment would skyrocket, and the nation's economy could take decades to recover. Now, who would win? That's a tricky question. The outcome would depend on various factors. The strength of each faction, their resources, their strategies, all would play a part. And let's not forget about foreign intervention. Other countries could take sides or seize the opportunity to further their own agendas. This adds another layer of uncertainty to the equation. But regardless of who would win, one thing is for sure. A second American Civil War would be a catastrophe. The damage, both human and economic, would be immense and long-lasting. The social fabric of the nation would be torn apart, and the road to recovery would be long and arduous. The takeaway here is that a civil war, no matter who wins, is a losing proposition for the nation. It's a path that leads to destruction and despair. Let's hope we never have to find out what a second American Civil War would look like. Because if there's one thing we can be certain of, it's this. A second American Civil War would be a catastrophe. So, is a second American Civil War a real possibility? Let's face it. The divisions within the country are deep and growing deeper by the day. The widening economic gap and rising partisanism have been sowing seeds of discontent for years. It's a powder keg, and the fuse is getting shorter. We've seen the warning signs. The protests and riots that followed the election of Donald Trump, the armed insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, and the high-profile shootings are all stark reminders of the tensions boiling beneath the surface. Each incident, each act of violence, is a step closer to a precipice we'd be wise to avoid. And yet, in a recent poll, 1/3 of Americans believe civil war is likely in the next 5 years. That's not just a statistic, it's a chilling reflection of our times. But what would a second civil war entail? The prospect is daunting. A nation divided, families torn apart, economies collapsing. The country we know and love would be transformed into a battlefield. The resources we rely on could become scarce, foreign intervention could shift the balance of power, and millions could be displaced. The outcome is unpredictable, but one thing is certain: it would be a catastrophe. However, it's crucial to remember that this is all hypothetical. The future is not set in stone, and we have the power to change it. It's up to us to bridge the divides that are tearing us apart. We need to foster understanding, encourage dialogue, and work towards a more united America. So, is a second American Civil War a real possibility? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. We must do everything in our power to prevent it. And on that note, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content like this. Stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, stay safe out there.